The exterminator's van is white, and it has a little cartoon bug on the side with an X through it, and it costs your neighbor $800 a year to keep that van coming back. Ants in the spring, roaches by the stove, silverfish in the bathroom, slugs on the lettuce. Every season has its pest, and every pest has its bill. Now, I want you to open your own kitchen cupboard. Reach past the flour and the sugar. There's a box back there, plain, orange, and white, that has been sitting in nearly every kitchen in the world for 100 years, and it costs about $1. Baking soda. I am not going to stand here and tell you it kills every crawling thing on this earth, because that would not be true, and I do not tell you things that are not true. But I am going to tell you exactly what it really does, on which pests, and why it works, and I am going to be honest with you about where it falls short too, because the honest truth is worth more to me than a big claim that does not hold up when you try it in your own house. My name is Martin Hofer. I grew up on a small farm in the foothills south of Munich in Bavaria. My grandmother, Rosina, fed 8 people out of that kitchen without ever once driving to a supermarket, and she kept the pests out of her flower bin and her garden with things you could hold in one hand. Baking soda was one of them. Not the only one, but one of the most useful and the most misunderstood. Today, I want to show you what my grandmother actually did with it, why it worked the way she used it, and where the internet gets it wrong when people tell you it does everything. Stay with me, because by the end, you will know exactly which pests this dollar box handles, how to use it so it actually works, and where you still need something else. That honesty is the whole point. Let me start with the one pest where baking soda earns its keep the most, and that is the cockroach. A roach does not have a stomach like ours. It cannot burp. It cannot pass gas the way we do. So when a roach eats something that makes gas build up inside it, that gas has nowhere to go, and over time it kills the roach. That is the whole mechanism, and it is real. It is not folklore. It is simple biology. Here is how my grandmother did it, and how you do it tonight. You take equal parts baking soda and white sugar, a spoonful of each, and you mix them together dry in a little dish. The sugar is not there to sweeten anything for you. The sugar is there because a roach cannot taste the baking soda on its own and will walk right past a pile of plain powder. Mixed with sugar, the roach cannot tell the difference, and it eats both together. You set this little dish behind the stove, under the sink, along the back of the cupboard where the crumbs are, anywhere you have seen a roach cross in the night. You leave it there. You do not expect a miracle by morning. A roach's body is bigger and tougher than you think, and this takes days, sometimes longer, not hours, but it works, and it works without a single drop of poison in your kitchen, which matters if you have small children or a dog who likes to put its nose where it should not. The second place this dollar box earns its keep is with ants, though I have to be honest with you here too, because this is where a lot of people expect too much. Baking soda does not poison an ant the way it can slowly work on a roach. What it does is confuse the trail. An ant does not think the way we do. It follows a scent path laid down by the ants before it, back to the nest and out again. That scent path is how a whole line of ants finds your sugar bowl 3 days in a row without getting lost. When you dust a line of baking soda across the path the ants are using, along the windowsill, across the door threshold, in the crack where they are coming in, you break that scent trail. The ants that cross it get confused. Some studies and some old farmhouses both tell the same story here, that a disrupted trail is a broken supply line, and an ant colony that cannot find its way back to your kitchen stops sending its workers there. It is not a killing method the way the roach bait is. It is a denying method. You are not murdering the ants one by one. You are closing the road they were using, and they go find an easier road somewhere else. For that reason, I always pair it with something plain and old, which is finding where they are actually getting in and sealing the crack with a little caulk after the ants have moved off. The baking soda buys you the peace to go find that crack without a line of ants marching across your counter while you look for it. Now, let me tell you about the garden, because this is the part that surprised even me when I first understood the chemistry behind what my grandmother had been doing her whole life without ever explaining why. Baking soda raises the pH on the surface of a leaf. Just slightly, just enough. And there is a whole family of fungus, the kind that causes powdery mildew on your squash, black spot on your roses, and that gray, fuzzy rot that gets into your tomatoes in a wet summer, that cannot survive well once that surface turns even a little bit alkaline. This is not folklore either. Gardeners and agricultural researchers have tested this for decades, and the results hold up, especially as a way to stop a fungus problem before it spreads, rather than curing a plant that is already covered in it. Here is the mix my grandmother used. Though she never called it a recipe, she just called it the leaf water. 1 tablespoon of baking soda, a few drops of plain dish soap so the mixture actually sticks to the leaf instead of rolling off, and 1 gallon of water. You shake it and you spray the leaves, top and underneath, early in the morning before the sun gets strong, because spraying in the heat of the day can scorch a leaf that already has droplets sitting on it. You do this once a week through the wet part of the summer and you will see far less of that white dust and gray fuzz that ruins a garden by August. I want to be plain with you about the limit here too. This will not save a plant that is already half rotted with fungus. It is a shield, not a cure. Use it early, use it weekly, and it earns its keep. Wait until your zucchini leaves are already white with mildew, and you are asking a $1 box to do the work of a full season of neglect. And that is not fair to the baking soda or to you. Now, slugs. This one my grandmother swore by, and I have tried it myself more times than I can count, and it works, though the reason is not what most people think. A slug moves across your garden bed on a slick trail of its own slime, and that slime is how it protects its soft body from anything rough or drying underneath it. Baking soda, when it touches that slime, pulls the moisture out of it fast. It is not a poison to the slug the way it works on a roach's insides. It is closer to what happened when I was a boy and touched a raw slug with plain salt just to watch what happened, and I do not recommend doing that to living things for entertainment, only that the chemistry is the same family. You sprinkle a light ring of baking soda around the base of a plant you are protecting, and a slug that has to cross it will not. The honest limit here is that rain washes it away in a single storm, and you have to lay it down again after every heavy rain. It is not a permanent fence. It is a fence you rebuild. Now, let me tell you about the smell. Because pest control is not only about killing something. Sometimes it is about making a space unpleasant to live in for the pest in the first place. And this is where baking soda does something the exterminator's chemical spray cannot do nearly as well. A closed-up garbage bin, a musty cupboard, an old shed where mice like to nest. All of these draw pests partly because of the smell that builds up inside them, the food smell, the dampness, the rot. An open box of baking soda sitting inside any of these spaces pulls a good part of that smell out of the air the same slow, quiet way it pulls the smell out of your refrigerator. Less smell means less reason for a mouse or an ant colony or a fly to think there is food worth investigating in there. It will not stop a determined mouse who can already smell cheese through a wall, but it takes away one of the small daily invitations that draw pests toward a space in the first place, and that is worth something over a whole season. Now, here's the part I promised you at the start, the honest limit. Because I would rather you trust me than be impressed by me for 5 minutes and then disappointed next week. Baking soda does not touch bed bugs. It does not touch fleas the way diatomaceous earth does, scratching through a shell. It will not clear out a termite problem, and if you have termites, you need a real inspection, not a kitchen remedy, because that is a problem that can cost you your whole house if you wait on it. It will not solve a heavy wasp nest or a mouse infestation that has already gotten into your walls. Anyone who tells you a box of baking soda replaces the entire pest control industry for every single pest is telling you something that sounds good on a video and falls apart the first time you try it on a bedbug. What it replaces, honestly, is a good part of the everyday pest bill. The monthly roach spray, the ant spray you buy every spring, the fungicide bottle at the garden store that costs $12 and only lasts 1 season, the slug pellets that cost more than they should for what is really just salt and poison in a fancy bag. Add up what a family spends across a single year on all of those small bottles and sprays, and you are often looking at more than $150, sometimes closer to $200, for problems that a single box of baking soda, a bit of sugar, and a bar of dish soap can handle for most of the year. That is the honest math. Not everything, but a real and meaningful piece of it, for less than the cost of a cup of coffee. Now, I want to take a moment, because this is the part that matters more than the recipe. Think about who profits when you believe you need a different bottle for every single pest in your house and garden. The roach spray company, the ant spray company, the fungicide company, the slug pellet company. 4 different bottles, 4 different brands, 4 different profits, and every one of them selling you a piece of the same simple chemistry that a $1 box in your own cupboard already does for most of it. Nobody is hiding this from you in some back room. It is simpler than that, and it is a little sadder than that. There is no advertisement budget behind a box of baking soda because there is no repeat sale worth chasing. You buy the box once, it sits in your cupboard for a year, and nobody gets rich off that. So nobody tells you. My grandmother did not need anybody to tell her. She kept a roach dish behind the stove, a shaker by the garden gate for the slugs, and a bottle of leaf water for the squash, and she never once drove to a store for a spray. Not because she was clever, because in her time and her village there was no spray to drive to, and she figured out what worked with what was already sitting on her own shelf. So here is what I want you to do this week. Go to your own cupboard. Take out the baking soda. Mix a spoonful with a spoonful of sugar and set it in a little dish behind your stove tonight if roaches have ever bothered you there. Dust a thin line along your windowsill if ants have found their way in this spring. If your tomatoes or your roses have started to show that white dusty look, mix the leaf water tonight and spray it before the sun comes up tomorrow. Ring your lettuce bed with a little baking soda if the slugs have been at it. And then come back and tell me in the comments which pest you tried it on, and be honest with me about what happened, because the stories you send back teach the next person watching more than I ever could on my own. Next time, I want to show you the other box in my grandmother's cupboard that most people throw away without a second thought, the plain white vinegar that sat right next to the baking soda, and what happens when the 2 of them work together on the pests that neither one handles alone. It is the natural next step after today. Until then, use what is already in your own kitchen, be honest about what it can and cannot do, and remember the people who built this country with their hands knew things we are only just starting to remember.